One Energy continues. Senator Hanson-Young.
Oh, thank you. Mr Pratt, I'm not sure who at the table is best placed to answer these questions, but they're in relation to underground coal gasification. So, do you need to change anybody or...?
Undoubtedly, but I don't...
No? Okay, all right, okay. I'm asking what the department's view is of underground coal gasification, whether the department believes it is an industry that should be continuing here in Australia.
Senator, just looking for confirmation, but I think this may be an issue that's best directed to the Department of Industry, being a resources issue.
Well, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
It's energy.
What aspect of underground coal gasification are we talking about? Are we talking about
Well,
carbon capture and storage, or...?
The idea that it would be used as a form of energy production.
Coal seam gas?
No, as in underground coal gasification, such as what is being started in Leigh Creek in South Australia. The same technology that's been banned in Queensland. They're different to coal seam gas.
Right.
So it's a project under EPBC, so environmental regulation 1.5. If it's specifically on Leigh Creek, under EPBC, it's not as a policy position in relation.
We potentially could help you if it's an environmental regulation question under 1.5, but if it's an energy issue, we're not going well so far.
So it's not an energy, a form of energy that you recognise then?
Senator, it's not a technology with which we've had a lot of familiarity in terms of energy that's operating in the NEM at the moment in the national electricity market. So we can certainly, as the Secretary has indicated, we'll follow up to see if there's insights into the issue elsewhere in the department, but not in the work that we do.
So, Mr Pratt, there is a new project of underground coal gasification that's underway in South Australia. It's the same technology that has been banned in Queensland. I'm wondering what role the Environment Department would have in looking as to whether this technology or this project should be given further credence, given A, you don't seem to know much about the technology itself, B, the environmental disaster it's been in Queensland.
So I suspect the most likely area for us to have an intersection with this will be under our environmental regulation area at 1.5. Ostensibly that's coming on at 8:25 this evening. I will just check whether or not any of my environmental protection colleagues are running away. Well, we will see what we can discover, and later on this evening we'll try and help you out with that.
Well, of course, because I do want to get to the issue of the EPBC Act and various triggers in relation to that, particularly in relation to this project.
Okay. Well, we still have that to do, but
Yes.
clearly the energy group not going to be able to help this evening.
That's fine. I might just ask the Minister. Minister, last week when there was a motion about this in the Senate,
Sorry, Senator. We might be able to shed some light, but...
it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yes.
Greg Manning, Senator, Assistant Secretary, Assessment and Post-Approvals Branch.
Okay. Mr Manning, is that right?
That's right.
Mr Manning. Has the Leigh Creek energy project come across your desk at all?
It's a project that I am aware of, but it is not a project that has been specifically referred to the department. So it was drawn to our attention by a third party. I think it was in the Environmental Defender's Office or someone of that nature drew it to our attention.
And so it's been brought to your attention. What role do you have to look at the environmental impact of that project as it is today?
So, consistent with normal practices under the EPBC Act, in the first instance it's a matter for the proponent to consider whether a project's likely to have a significant impact on matters of national environmental significance. Now, I understand the proponent went through that process and came to the conclusion that it was not something that warranted referral to us. So when it was drawn to our attention, I believe we wrote to the proponent, reminding them of their obligations under the Act. And I believe they provided some further information back to us in relation to the project at that point in time.
Okay.
Yep.
Would you be able to table any of that correspondence?
I could take that on notice. I don't have it here with me tonight.
Yes, but if you could take that on notice.
Yep.
And do you have any recollection of how long ago that was?
Not I can't. I'd have to take on notice exactly when it was, but it was in the last 6 months.
Okay,
I think
so
was
this
period of
year.
time.
This year.
Yeah, that's right.
So when they wrote back to you, you wrote. Does that mean the department has resolved that this isn't a project that is of a concern?
So from our perspective, we looked into it based on the information that the proponent provided to us, and we got some further advice in relation to it. And what we, in essence, discovered through that process is that there is no M&ES in the immediate vicinity at the surface level that we would be concerned about. So it's situated in a degraded old coal mine itself. So there were no M&ES present for us to be concerned about in that place. In terms of the surface water runoff, we looked at that and were satisfied that the water would tend to run towards the site, not away from it. So we're not concerned about indirect impacts of surface water runoff. And then we also looked at the potential for underground impacts, and including getting some advice from the Office of Water Science to help us look at that. And were satisfied on that basis that the proposed area was surrounded by aquitard, so very low permeability areas, and that there were no credible pathways, as based on the information that we had, of an impact to groundwater as well. So on the back of all of that, we concluded that we really didn't have any basis upon which to make a different judgment to what the proponent had in relation to likely impacts on matters of national environmental significance.
Was it a concern to you that this is the same practice that has been banned in Queensland? Did you take that into account?
From my perspective, I don't have a view on the policy of the nature of the production. So under the Act, we're required just to look at the likely impacts on matters of national environmental significance and make our judgments from that perspective.
And is there any ability to have any independent assessment of those potential concerns that were raised by the third party?
If necessary, Senator, as with all of our assessments and approvals work, if we feel that there is a need to get some further advice, then that's open to us to go and do that. And we draw upon that from time to time as needed. Yeah.
So this project has been couched as a trial. If it wasn't a trial, would that have triggered any further investigation or concern?
Yeah, so it's a good point. So you're right, it is small scale from what we understand, just the one gasifier, and it's only a 2 to 3 month demonstration as we understand it. It can't be definitive because unless we had a referral to go on, it's hard to say. But if it were a much larger project, a production scale, then we would certainly look at it in that light in terms of would there be a greater impact and more matters potentially affected than we're currently aware of.
And in your assessment, is it right to call it an assessment?
Not strictly speaking, because the matter was never referred to the department.
Yes.
So, we conduct assessments on matters that are referred to us. This one has not been.
Yes.
So we've looked at it to the extent as to whether that, it should have been and whether, further action was warranted. Yeah.
Okay. So in that kind of vein, Was it brought to the department's attention that this was on Aboriginal land?
I don't know specifically without checking some more
Could
of
you-
the background. I'd have to
Could you take that on notice as to
yeah,
whether you
yep.
were, whether the people looking at it were aware of that?
Yeah, I'll check if that was brought forward or made, but once again, from my perspective, the things we take account of under the Act are the listed matters. So unless there was some form of listed heritage matter associated with it, then it's, even if it were, it's likely not to have been a factor that
Okay.
was relevant for
Okay.
my consideration anyway.
Yeah. So if this was to extend beyond a trial, that may be able to constitute a separate referral?
Possibly, yes. So once again, if it progresses beyond a short-term trial into some sort of production, in the first instance, it would be over to the proponent to make their considerations as to whether it warranted a referral. And if necessary, we would investigate similar to what we, to the extent we have in this case as well. Yeah.
Okay. Was the department aware that the former general manager of investor relations at Link Energy, the company that has been fined millions of dollars in Queensland and has led to the ban of the technology in Queensland, Mr. Justin Peters, is now the executive chairman of Leigh Creek Energy? Are you aware of that?
No, not specifically. The department may have been in terms of the work it did. I'd need to go back and check whether that came through in the work that we've done thus far on this.
That would be helpful. There is a consideration, isn't there, under the EPBC Act for a consideration of a person's environmental history?
Yes, there is. But so there's different stages of the EPBC Act process, of course. So
Yes.
certainly where we're at on this project at the moment, environmental history wouldn't come into it. We were at the stage of just determining whether we sort of share the view of the proponent in relation
Yes.
to likely impacts, whether any action is required.
Yes.
If we were in the world whereby we were looking at making it a controlled action,
Yes.
which essentially captures the project in our net for assessment, then environmental history still not a factor at that stage. That stage is really just looking at whether there's a real or not insignificant chance or possibility of an impact on MNES. The point at the process at which environmental history becomes a factor is when we are looking to make a proposed decision, an approval decision in relation to it. And at that point, the Act requires us to look at the environmental history of proponents, as part of that due diligence, if you will, of fitness for holding an environmental approval.
Yes. Was the Link Energy project in Queensland ever referred as a controlled action under the EPBC Act?
I don't know, Senator, offhand. I look after assessments for the western half of the country.
Could somebody perhaps,
I would have to
Mr. Pratt, could
take
you
that
have
on
that?
notice, yeah.
Somebody
that on
check
notice,
that?
yep.
Thank you. The reason I'm asking this is because there is a connection between individuals who were involved with Link Energy, who are now, before ASIC, individuals who ran operations at Link Energy which have been fined millions and millions of dollars. There is now a class action.
Yeah.
The same individuals, one person in particular, Mr. Justin Peters, is now the chairperson of Leigh Creek Energy. So, seems extraordinary to me that you can carry on like a bunch of cowboys in Queensland, get in trouble, have the Environment Department in Queensland recognise what you're doing is wrong, move south and set up shop in a different state, and no one draws the connection. Is that something that the federal department can investigate or look at?
Oh, well, so as you rightly pointed out, environmental history becomes part of our process at that decision point in the process. So if a project by Leigh Creek were to progress that far, then we would definitely look into, the environmental history, particularly of executives. So that is explicitly captured within what is looked at as part of the environmental history considerations under the Act.
Okay.
So there definitely are processes whereby that would be looked at the relevant stage of the process.
Okay.
But at the moment, this one is sort of, from my perspective, far from that. Yeah.
Because it's been put up as a smaller project. effectively?
Well, because at this stage, based upon the information we have, there is no reason for me to believe at the moment that there is any credible pathway to an impact on M&ES, and therefore something that should be looked at under the Act.
Okay. You've taken a few questions on notice, so I look forward to getting that. When we
Sure,
can.
no troubles.